Hello, welcome back to another episode of Let's Just Talk about Social Justice. Today we're talking about growing up in the middle, why most teens don't fit the extremes. Intro, the middle is a place too. Adolescence is often described as a search for identity, but the search doesn't happen on a blank canvas. It happens inside real social worlds shaped by race, class, gender, expectations, family, culture, and neighborhoods young people grow up in. When we look closely at how teens understand their gender and attraction, we find that most of them don't land at the extremes. Instead, they cluster in what researchers like Kassis and her colleagues 2021 called the intermediate diverse category, a space of fluidity, experimentation, and becoming. But this middle space isn't just about personal exploration. It's about context. Intersectionality, a framework introduced by Kimberly Crenshaw, 1989, reminds us that identity is never one-dimensional. A black girl navigating racialized beauty standards, Collins 2000, experienced gender differently than a white girl whose femininities are formed by mainstream media. A queer teen in a working-class family may have a fewer safe space to explore attraction than a middle-class peer with access to support in school clubs or forming adults. A trans or non-conforming youth of color may face layer of risk like racism, transphobia, and economic barriers that shape how openly they can explore who they are. So when we talk about the adolescents in the middle, we're not talking about confusions. We're talking about development shaped by power, culture, and opportunities. We're talking about young people trying to understand themselves while navigating systems that don't treat all identities equal. This episode is about honoring the middle space, its complexity, its beauty, and its challenges. It's about understanding why so many teens live there and why the middle deserves to be seen as a real place, not a temporary stop on the way to something more certain, because many young people, the middle isn't a phase, it's a home. Scene 2. What the middle looks like in today's time. When people talk about identity today, you will often hear comments saying they're just making up new terms. Kids are confused. Oh, back in my day, you were either a girl or boy. These reactions miss something essential about adolescent development. Young people do not explore identity in isolation. They explore within social system that shapes what feels possible, what feels safe, and what feels allowed. The people space that so many teens occupied is not just a sign of confusion, it's a sign of reflection of environments they move through. For many adolescents, those environments send mixed messages. Schools may encourage self-expression in theory, but will enforce dress codes or gender expectation in practice. Family may support independence, but shut down conversation about attraction or gender unless they fit familiar norms. Peer groups can often be both liberating and limiting. Some teens find friends who celebrate exploration, while others learn quickly which part of themselves are better kept quiet. These everyday interaction creates the boundary of middle, shaping how young people can explore who they are. Digital space adds another layer to this. Online communities gives teens room to try pronouns, aesthetics, or labels they might not feel safe using offline. Social media exposed them to language identities that didn't exist in previous generation vocabulary, expanding what feels imaginable. But at the same time, platforms can also expose them to criticism, surveillance, and rapid judgment. The middle becomes a place where teens toggle between visibility, protection, expression, and caution, depending on the space they're in. Cultural backgrounds and communities norms further shapes the middle. Youth from immigrant families may navigate expectations tied to tradition, religion, and family reputation. Teens of color often manage how the gender expression is interpreted through racialized stereotypes. Some young people learn to shift their presentation depending on whether they are at home, school, at work, or online. These shifts are not signs of indecisive, they're strategies for safety, belonging, and survival. When adolescents in the middle, they are not lost, they are contextual. They're trying to understand themselves while navigating a system that does not, again, treat identities equal. The middle becomes a space of experimentation, protection, adaptation, and a place where identity is shaped not only by teens who are becoming, but what the world makes seems possible. Scene 2. What theory says in the middle is normal and expected. The middle is not an identity. Is not an idea that suddenly appeared in this decade. It's grounded in decades of development in sociological theories. In fact, the middle is exactly what researchers says adolescents should be at. One framework that helps us understand the space is Erikson theory of psychosocial development. Erikson described adolescence as a stage of identity versus role confusion, where young people experience with different roles, labels, and expressions before committing to a stable sense of self. Erikson 1968. In this view, middle is not confusion, it is a moratorium, a healthy period of exploring. Teens are supported to try things on, shift, question, or revise. That's development, not a disorder. But identity doesn't unfold in isolation. Only Bronfenbrenner ecological system theory reminds us that adolescence grows inside layers of influence: family, schools, peer, media, culture, and policy. Bronfenbrenner, 1979. Each layer sends a message about what identities are safe, acceptable, or risky. So when teens stay in the middle, they're responding to the systems around them, they're reading the room. Social culture theorists like Levi-Vygotsky added another layer. Identity is shaped through social interaction. Teens learn who they can be while watching others, trying out language, and receiving feedback from their communities. Vygotsky, 1978. If the feedback is supported, the middle feels expansive. If the feedback is hostile, the middle becomes a protected space, somewhere to explore quietly, safely, strategically. When research like Kassis, 2021, finds that most adolescents fall into an immunodiverse category, it aligns with everything that theorists predict. Teens aren't confused, they're contextual. They're navigating identities inside systems that, again, don't treat them all equal. The middle becomes a space of adapting, resilience, and survival. It's where identity is tied on, tested, protected, and sometimes hidden. Not because teens don't know who they are, but because they're learning who they're allowed to be. Everything we just talked about, the social pressures, the unequal system, the lived realities, and shown up in decades of development theories. The middle isn't just something teens feel, it's something research has been documenting for generations. Scenes 3. What adult gets wrong about the middle? One of the big misunderstandings adults have about today's teens is the belief that middle is a sign of confusion, rebellion, or attention seeking. When we look closely at adolescent development and at the system the teens are navigating, we see something very different. Adults are often misread the middle because they're looking at it through the lens of their own childhood, not the world young people are growing up in. Many adults grew up in environments where gender and attraction were presented as fixed categories, with very little room to expand. The language was limited, the representation was narrow, and the consequences of stepping outside those binaries were often severe. So when adults see teens using new terms, shifting labels, or exploring identities that didn't have a name a generation ago, it can feel unfamiliar, even threatening. But unfamiliar does not mean untrue. Adults tend to assume that identity should be stable early on. This clarity equals maturity. But developmental research tells us the opposite. Erikson's idea of moratorium shows that adolescence is supposed to be a time of trying new things out, revising and experimenting. The middle is not a delay in development, it is development. When adults expect certainty from teens, they're expecting something that contradicts decades of psychological theory. Another thing adults often get wrong is assuming identity exploration is purely personal. They figure that teens are navigating schools, families, peer groups, online spaces that all sends different messages about what is acceptable. Bronfenbrenner, ecological system theory makes this clear. Identity is shaped by the environment young people move through. A teen might feel safe exploring at school but not at home, or safe online but not in the neighborhood. Adults sometimes interpret the shift as incohesive, when it's actually a strategy. Teens are adjusting to the level of safety and risk. And then there's intersectionality. Adults often look how race, class, gender, and culture shapes the middle. A black teen navigating racialized beauty standards, a queer teen in a conservative household, or a trans youth facing multiple layers of discrimination. They're not just exploring identities, they're navigating power. They're learning how to survive systems that weren't built with them in mind. When adults ignore these layers, they're misinterpreting caution as confusion and adaptation as indecisive. When adults get wrong, ultimately assuming the middle is a problem to be solved But for many teens, the middle is a place of creativity, resilience, and self-protection. It's where they learn to listen to themselves while reading the world around them. It's where they practice becoming. The middle isn't a failed identity, it's a process of identity. Scene 4, a story, a black girl, what I'm allowed to be. Imagine a black girl saying, the hardest part of growing up isn't figuring out who she's going to be or who she is. The hardest part is figuring out what she's allowed to be, all of herself all at once. She's a multiracial, but to the world, she's first and foremost a black queer girl. And people treat her like the identity should come with a script that she never agreed to perform. She moves between masculine and feminine expression, depending on her mood, and the version of herself she wants to be that day. Some mornings she puts on dress pants and a button-up, feeling sharp, grounded, and comfortable in her skin. Other days, she does her makeup, slip into a dress and boots, and step outside looking like a baddie channeling Megan Thee Stallion, because that kind of softness and power makes her feel whole in a way she doesn't always get to be. Both versions are real. Both versions are whole. When adults struggle isn't her identity, it's the expectation they have for her. They want her to fit in neat into binary. Are you a tomboy or girly girl? Are you into girls or are you into boys? And when she said, I like whoever I like, gender is not the point. Adults heal in confusion. They heal. She doesn't know what she wants. But she's not confused. She just doesn't see gender as a factor in love or connection. She's not picking a lane because she was never meant to live in one. She wanted to edit herself depending on space. When she dressed masculine, people tell her to dress more like a girl, accusing her of trying to look gay. When she dressed feminine, she gets compliments, not because of her looks, but because she looks like what they expect a black girl to be. Everyone has a version of her. How she looks, how she acts, how she talks, how she expresses, but none of those versions fits. She learns a sense where she's authentic self is unwelcome, unsafe, or too much. She's just the way Braun Bongford would predict, shifting her expression based on which space feels safe, which felt judgmental, and which feels like home. She hears the phrase strong black woman over and over like it's the only option she has, but that phrase stings. She wished someone had told her she didn't have to be strong all the time. The softness is allowed, that fluidity is allowed, that figuring out yourself is allowed. She wished someone had told her that black girls deserve room to explore too. And the truth is, this multiracial queer girl, this story is mine. It's a story of learning to hold on my identities at once, even when the world keeps trying to make me choose. It's a story of navigating expectation I never asked for, expectation that we handed to me before I even knew what they were. It's a story of discovering what the middle space between masculine and feminine, between labels, between what people think they see and who I actually am, isn't a phase. It's a home I'm building for myself piece by piece. But I also know this story isn't just mine. It could be a neighbor. It could be a cousin, a classmate, a friend, a daughter. Anyone who has ever felt squeezed between who they are and who the world tells them to be. Anyone who has had to shrink, shift, or soften themselves just to stay safe. Anyone who has lived in the middle because it was the only place that felt honest. And the expansion of the story is we're not just surviving the middle, we're redefining it. We're showing that black girls and anyone living in an intersection of race, gender, and queerness can be soft or bold, fluid and grounded, masculine and feminine, certain and still, exploring. We're showing that connection can matter more than categories. That who we are is shaped by energy, safety, and truth, not by boxes someone else built. We're showing that identity isn't a fixed label, it's a landscape, wide enough for every version who we are and who we're becoming, and we are walking in a landscape with courage together. Outro. The middle is ours. When we talk about identity, people love to pretend it's simple. They want clear lines, clear labels, and an easy answer. But the truth is, most of us, especially those of who are black, queer, multiracial, or living in the intersection, grows up in between. We grow up learning how to hold our softness and our strength, our fluidity and our certainty, our belonging and our becoming. The middle isn't confusion, it's a place of truth. It's where we learn to listen to ourselves, even when the world is loud with expectation. It's where we learn to shape our identities in ways that feel honest, not performative. It's where we learn that we don't have to choose between versions of ourselves, we can be all of them. And the thing is, the middle just doesn't belong to me. It belongs to anyone who ever felt too much or not enough, anyone who has ever been told to pick a side, anyone who has ever been asked to shrink themselves to make other people feel comfortable. The middle is a place we build together, a place where we get to rewrite the rules who we're allowed to be. So, as we close today's episode, I want you to leave with this. Identity isn't a destination, it's a landscape. It's shifting wide and alive, and every step you take as a landscape is real. Every version of yourself is real, every moment of exploring is real. Keep walking, keep becoming, keep owning the middle, because the middle is a place and it's ours. Thank you for listening.